In this episode, we sit down with Matthew Swift, co founder, president, and CEO of Concordia, to discuss leadership, collaboration, and global impact. Matthew reflects on growing Concordia into a leading nonpartisan platform that brings together business, government, and nonprofit leaders to address the world's most pressing challenges. From hosting global summits alongside the United Nations General Assembly to moderating conversation with heads of state and CEOs, he shares lessons learned from convening influence at the highest levels. The conversation also explores how global thinking informs local leadership, the role of chambers of commerce in shaping communities, and what it takes to build purpose driven impact in an increasingly complex world. Okay, Matt, thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me, Kiana. This is
This
great.
I'm so glad that our calendars finally synced for this
Finally.
because you're just all over the place.
I
I
don't know. You're
mean,
busier than I am,
I
I
don't
think.
think
I
so.
think you're
That's
all over the
not
place.
true. That is not
I don't
true.
know.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Well, I am a huge fan, selfishly, just because I think you are incredible with how you talk to people
Thank you.
and you're a good person.
Thank you.
So I wanted to start it off that way. But for those who don't know, tell us a little bit about Concordia and just what brought you to start it back in 2011.
Of course. No, so the original concept for Concordia actually came when I was still in college.
Okay.
It
Where'd you
was
go?
I went to Georgetown University,
Mhm.
and it was kind of a combination of so many different things happening at once. First, one of the closest people in my life is a guy named Nick Logothetis, and
Mm.
we met in high school. We started a business in high school, and we both knew that we wanted to work together, and we both knew we wanted to pursue something entrepreneurial. So that
Okay.
was sort of step
Yeah.
one. And then second was I went to this student run auction,
Okay.
and they were raising money for this cause on campus.
Uh-huh.
And at the auction, they had all of these different items listed, and one was lunch with the former prime minister of Spain, and another was lunch with the former president of Poland, and
Okay.
one was coffee with Madeleine Albright, the first woman secretary of state, who happened
Okay.
to also be a professor. And I thought, well, gosh, this all sounds so cool. I've never met a president before. I've never had
Right.
lunch or coffee with a secretary of state before. And so I remember thinking, gosh, this is going to be so expensive. I'm not going to be able to afford this. And in fact, they were doing the bidding in increments of $5.
Oh, no way. That's
I
a
don't think
great
I've ever,
idea.
I know, but I don't think I've told them this. I think my lunch with the prime minister of Spain cost me like $70.
No
I think the lunch cost more
way.
than the actual thing. So I ended up buying a lot of the things from the auction,
Yeah.
and it led to these relationships that Nick and I both
Mm.
built with these different people. And
Yeah.
I remember the first lunch was with Alexander Kwasniewski, who was the president of Poland from 1995 to 2005. He brought Poland into NATO. Remarkable leader. And I remember being so nervous before and thinking, well, what does a president order at a restaurant? And how do you make sure it's the right table? And how do you do all of these things thinking they're like an alien? Those moments in college, and I'm grateful forever to Georgetown University for those moments and those opportunities, led to the creation of Concordia. And here we are 15 years later. Concordia is one of the leading convening organizations in the world that brings leaders of government, leaders of the private sector, leaders of civil society
Mm.
all together to think about how to establish public and private sector cooperation towards the most pressing issues of our time.
Right. And it's nonpartisan.
It is. So Concordia is a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization. We're a public charity
Right.
actually, but we're a membership-based institution, and
Okay.
we are most known for the annual summit that we hold in New York,
Yes, let's
which you
talk about
attended.
this. Let's talk
Yeah.
about this. Well, I'll just share some of my experience because I'm not a New York gal. I've been to New York 3 times
Okay.
now. And I get off the plane and I'm in immediate angst because it's just so intense.
Uh-huh.
And but when I got there and just to see from a event execution standpoint,
Mhm.
whoa, well done to you and your team
Thank you.
because it's just so incredible to see 4,000 people all moving within this one small space and it's sectioned next to UN General Assembly Week, right?
Mhm.
And you do that on purpose,
Mhm.
which I find so wonderful that you think about all of these things. But when I went and just the different panels that you had and the different people that we were meeting, and then to watch you go from on stage to transfer to a meeting space, and you had all of these people just lining up waiting to talk to you, and you gave each and every single person your undivided attention when you were talking to them in the middle of you were about to head to a meeting with the president of some amazing country.
Mhm.
But it didn't
Thank you.
matter because you had the same attitude with every single person you were with, and then walking into that meeting, I'm sure you just killed it, of course. So I say all of that because tell me about why it's so important to bring together these people in the heart of New York City.
Of course. Well, and first, I want to say none of this, all that you saw and experienced, and I'm
Mm.
so glad that you came up to New
I
York,
know, me too.
braved New York City, especially at probably one of the most hectic
It
times of
was
year
so
in New York,
hectic.
um, to come and see it. But you mentioned the team, and
Yes.
none of this would be possible without an incredible team. I
Yeah.
am blessed. I wake up every morning and I'm so excited to get to work because I love the people that I work with. And I have a phenomenal, phenomenal, and very hardworking team. And
Mhm.
that's the only way all this works. But let's go back to the premise of Concordia.
Right.
The premise of Concordia is that convening is an art form.
Mhm.
How you convene and bring people together is so important because, in my view, those that decide to show up actually really have an impact
Mhm.
on issues, and whether it's a local issue, whether it's something personal, something professional, something that could be seen as a global issue,
Right.
whatever it is, if you don't show up, you guarantee
Mm.
that it will not, that your involvement, your engagement will certainly have no effect on that issue or subject. But the second piece is, how do you bring people from all different backgrounds, cultures, religions, societies, economic status
Mhm.
together to talk about issues and challenges? And what Nick and I found when we started Concordia 15 years ago was that many of the convenings, one, claimed to be nonpartisan, but I would argue we're not.
Right.
But secondly, there was this real trend towards how do we be as exclusive as humanly possible? How do we
Mhm.
only have the highest level at every turn? And don't get me wrong, from a convening perspective, sometimes that is important. You
Mhm.
need the decision makers in the room, the people who
Right.
are responsible for these issues. But the premise of Concordia, or one of the premises of Concordia that's really important to follow, is that you can't talk about these issues if you don't have people who truly are directly affected by these issues. And I
Right.
remember, I always think it's very important. Self awareness is such an
Yes.
important trait, something that I think about all the time. And as part of self awareness, I really track every mistake I've made in the book. And by the
Mhm.
way, it's a long, long list. And I will never forget at our second summit in New York, it was 2012, and we hosted this panel on um, the future for women from Afghanistan. And I
Mhm.
remember standing in the back of the plenary room and watching the panel, and all of a sudden I realized there is not an Afghan woman on this panel,
Oh,
right? And that was where I learned that lesson of saying you should not talk about issues if you are not inclusive of the people affected by these issues. And I
right.
never forgot that lesson.
Well, and how do one thing I really loved when I was there is that whether you were at the espresso line, you were getting lunch, or you were in the elevator or up the escalator walking to a next panel, is that every single person there was open to communication. They were
Yes.
open to networking. They were willing to sit down and talk to a stranger. How did you create that culture alongside Nick that says this is meant to be open, and when you come to this conference and this summit, you better wanna talk to people.
Well, so I love this because this is a great segue into
Yeah.
something you and I've talked a lot about, which is faith.
Yeah.
And one of the things as we've talked about, I'm still on my faith journey and have lots to figure out on that front. However, one of the things that I love the most about church, and there's probably a formal name for it, and you can tell me what that name of it
I
is.
probably don't know it
But
either.
it's when they invite you to say hello to everyone sitting around you.
Yep.
And I remember every year when I open the summit, I talk about that that we're all here for a reason.
Right.
Introduce yourself to someone when you're at the
Mm.
coffee bar. Go up to someone if you want to meet them. That's why everyone's here. And so everybody who's walking in the doors of Concordia, any Concordia event that we do, should be prepared to meet people
Right.
and to engage people. And I remember one year, and you know what? I want to kind of get back to it because it actually went really well. Was I invited everybody in the plenary
Yeah.
to do exactly that, shake the hands of the people around them,
Mhm.
behind them, in front of them. Um, but that's always something I've always loved about church
Yeah.
is that moment of connectivity that
Well,
brings.
because you have to, because at the end of the day, I think we're all still so intimidated just to put ourselves out there
Hmm.
in the event that we might get rejected,
Hmm.
even though that's like never the case.
Hmm.
That really never happens when you initially meet someone. But I feel like that fear is just in us still. So you have to really push yourself to say, "Hi, how are you?" Like, well, good to see you.
Yes.
Welcome to church. Welcome to Concordia, whatever that is. Like, you really have to put yourself out there. So I think you should do that,
Mhm.
bring it back, even though people are already so open when you
But
go.
it's the perfect way to get things started.
It is, it is. So I know that you host a interview series called the Swift Hour,
Yes.
and it's primarily at the summit. And you do it at all the summits, right? It's not just in New York.
Correct.
And then touch on really quick. Well, tell me where all the summits are held throughout the year because I know you host a couple.
Mhm.
And then let's talk about Swift Hour.
Of course. So we have the main annual summit is
Mhm.
always in New York. And as you mentioned earlier, it's always parallel to the
Parallel. That's the
UN.
word. Sorry, I could
No, don't
not
worry.
remember what the heck that word
Don't
was.
worry. It's
Thank you.
it's it's always parallel to the United Nations General
Yes.
Assembly. That is not because we have a formal affiliation with the UN. In fact,
Mhm.
we do not have a formal affiliation with them. But the reason we do it at that time each September is
Mhm.
because the majority of the world's heads of government and heads of state
Right.
are in not only the same city, they're all within about the same 30 blocks of one another.
Right.
And that's a unique element to the world's convening agenda.
Mhm.
It's actually the only
Yeah.
constant. You have the G20 meeting, the G7 meeting. Of course, you have major events such as the Olympics or the World Cup or other things that bring people together. But the only annual, for sure,
Mhm.
moment that the majority of the world's heads of government are in one place is always in September in New York City. And so that's why we have the summit then is to really, because one, I think the private sector needs a greater voice, but also the private sector needs to step up more
Mhm.
in the discussions of what's happening today around the world and the different policy issues and
Right.
challenges that we face. But second, I think it's also a really important time for civil society to be able to raise awareness on issues and subjects, to be able to one thing I've learned of all the different summits over the last 15 years at Concordia is the distinction between someone being against something versus someone not understanding something.
Mhm.
And a lot of times it's easy to say, well, they're against what I'm focused on or doing. Actually, have you thought about perhaps maybe they just don't understand it?
Right.
And so I want the Concordia summits to be used as platforms for people to better understand these issues and why they're important. You asked about some of the other events that we do. So we have what are called Horizon Summits. And these are smaller, more retreat style summits that we host all around the world.
Right.
They change location, so they're not in the same place each year. We develop a partnership with the government of that country. And so this year we have a summit in February in the Dominican Republic,
Mm.
in April in Dallas, Texas at
That's gonna
the
be so good.
yes, I'm excited about that. It's at the Medal of Honor
Mhm.
Museum, which is one of the most spectacular places I've ever seen.
Mm.
And it's right in Arlington, Texas. So everybody's got to go. And then we also do a series of summits in the Amazon rainforest. And this
Tell me
summer,
about that.
it's interesting. You hold these summits and you look at the art of
Mhm.
convening. And we've talked
Right.
about how important it is to have the people that are affected by issues
There.
at the table and there. What a very, very good friend of mine came to me and said is, have you ever thought also about the fact that you're talking about these issues, but you're not in the actual places themselves? And his name is Yvon Duque, and he was president of Colombia until 2022.
Mm.
And he, one of the youngest, if not the youngest president of Colombia. But he has been an enormous partner and friend to Concordia since our very beginning. And I remember, and just a little backstory on him. I remember when we all first met, and we were talking about where we wanted to go in our careers.
Mm.
And I remember he said, "Oh, I'm going to be." It wasn't "I want to be it." I am going to be the president of Columbia. And by the way, we're talking about the country, not the university. Columbia with an O. And I remember thinking at the time, I said, "Wow, this guy does not lack confidence."
Yeah.
Well, 12 years later,
He's
No,
there.
10 years later, he's president of Colombia,
Oh
and
my
I just think
goodness.
that's so cool.
Yeah.
And so he was getting ready to finish in Colombia. You can only serve one 4-year term. You can't
Oh,
run for
okay.
reelection. So he was getting ready to finish, and he came to me and he said, "One of the big issues that I've been focused on is the Amazon
Mm,
rainforest, but I want to talk about protecting the Amazon rainforest, but really through a private sector lens."
mm.
And so he said, "How do you feel about holding a summit each year in the rainforest?" And funny, it kind of like a lot of things. I think I get asked all the time, "How do you? What does it take to be an entrepreneur?" And I think part of it is it didn't even dawn on me to think about it or say no. I
Right.
thought that's so cool, let's do it.
Let's do it.
And funny enough, I'm like the least nature guy you could possibly
Well, so when
imagine.
he says in the Amazon, was your response like, "Oh, do you mean like in in the Amazon?"
Oh, I knew what he meant. I mean, he was
Yeah.
like in the rainforest, bringing people out of their comfort zone. And I'll never forget when we went to he left office, and then we went and had our first pitch meeting with the
Mhm.
potential sponsor for the what we call the Amazonas Initiative. And I remember him saying to all these sort of very formal executives of his company, he says, "Listen, this is this is not the four seasons, this is one season." And they all laughed, and I remember but, fast forward for the last 3 years, every year we have a summit in the rainforest, and it
Mm.
started in Ecuador and then Guyana
Yeah.
and then Brazil, and then this year it's gonna be in Colombia. So this summer, it's about 100 people. It's a retreat format. It is literally in the rainforest, and I
Wow.
have to say it is one of the great, blessings of my life that we have this program. I'm so how lucky am I? I get to go for 3, 4 days to some of the most remote parts of the world, and on the front lines of, one of the biggest battles of our time, which is
Yeah.
how do you protect and preserve, the Amazon rainforest, and especially how do you do that through market-driven solutions?
Right.
And that to me means that we are coming at it with the pragmatism that
Mhm.
I've always wanted to ensure is protected with Concordia. It's not enough to say
Yeah.
this is such an important issue, everyone must sacrifice, and this is what we do. It's not enough to say, well, a government has decreed this.
Right.
What I love about the mission of the Amazonas Initiative is it is all focused on nature-based, market-driven solutions to protecting the Amazon rainforest.
No, that's so good. And I think when you meet and you convene these people, the next steps following the summits. When when you set that goal that okay, we're going to convene now whether it's in New York, Dallas or the Amazon and you say we're going to have real discussions about these issues and it might get heated at moments, but we're meant to be together to have these discussions to then ultimately come up with those solutions. What is the next step following those summits for these connections that are made, whether it's between the
Mhm.
panelists or whether it's between the guests that are coming?
It's a great question, and it's a very important question,
Mm,
but it's one that I don't have an answer for you on because it's not part of what the solution that I'm bringing to the table. What
mhm.
I'm bringing to the table with Concordia is the convening component. Our
Right,
job is to be the best conveners in the world,
right.
creating the best environment for people to come together. What people make of that,
It's up to them.
what comes from that,
Yeah,
is up to them. And I'll tell you the big reason why it took me a long time to have a good answer to this question because I could sit here and point to so many different examples.
right,
This foundation received the largest grant in their history because of someone they met in the hallways at Concordia. This company did a joint venture with this other company that is now a multi-billion-dollar deal.
right.
This government established a real reset in relations because they both heads of state happened to be in the green room at the same time. I can give you those examples. But one, I think it's disingenuous for Concordia to sit there and say that's because of us.
Yeah,
No, our job is the convening, the art of convening. The second piece, and why I don't oftentimes go into what are the results of these different summits, is because there's no tracking mechanism that I could accurately enforce
mm,
to really capture that. And I don't want to. And so I think when you see a lot of other convening institutions that say, we're responsible for saving 400 million lives or this much capital going into this cause, that's fine.
yeah,
Good for them. It certainly is good marketing. Um, but to me, for Concordia, we we play the long game. We're
right.
reputation driven, and what comes from the summits that we hold is the responsibility of those who show up.
Yeah. No, that's so good. Let's touch on the Swift Hour because
Of
we
course.
totally skipped over it.
Yes.
Tell me about the Swift Hour, this interview series that you are so good at,
Thank you.
and just the different layout that you had at the New York Summit. You said you
Yes.
tried something new.
We did. So the Swift Hour is a series of interviews that I host with
Mm,
different leaders and people that I just think are absolutely fascinating from all around the world. And I do host them at the summit.
mm,
We at the different summits we build a set, and it's a filmed interview series.
right.
I've done it now for 3 years, and I absolutely love doing it because it gives me the opportunity to ask people questions about their story. What makes them
Mm,
tick? How do they do what they do? And that's a little bit different from what you see on stage at Concordia because a
right.
lot of times the content on the main stages, the different plenary stages, and in the breakouts, and some of the smaller receptions and different things, that's usually tied to a very specific announcement, initiative,
Mm,
people speaking on behalf of their governments, their
right.
companies, their organizations. Whereas the Swift Hour interviews are much more, how do you work? What makes you tick? How did you get here? And what I love about it is I have learned things about people I've known for years that I had no idea about. I've
Mm,
learned stories about their lives, and it has helped me better understand what makes these incredible, remarkable people. What are some of those common lines through all of them?
mm,
And that's been something I've been fascinated by because I think that what I'm asked all the time, what are the most common characteristics of people who are professionally, certainly in positions of enormous consequence. And so these interviews have enabled me to better understand that and
mm.
learn that. And so I love it. And sometimes you just never know where the conversation's going to go. And I really, it's become a real passion project of mine to host the Swift Hour. I absolutely love it.
Do we see a potential Swift Hour outside of the summits in the
Yes.
future?
Yes, it's
Oh,
something I think
okay.
about a lot. I think, um, I as an entrepreneur, and I think this is one of those many traits you have to have as an entrepreneur, I'm
Mm,
very impatient. But I've gotten better as I've gotten older of leaning into a little more of a process and
mm,
evolution. And so, yes, I absolutely will take it to new heights in
mm.
the future. When I have no idea, but I can't wait for
But
whenever
it's
that
on the
happens.
horizon. It's on the
Absolutely, no, I
horizon.
I absolutely love doing it, and I want to do it all the time. I also think that my background before co-founding Concordia was through this series of internships all in the media space. And one of the things that I think about a lot is just the extent to which I would argue
Mm,
journalism and media is failing the
right.
public across the board. And I'm not a journalist. I don't
Yeah.
want to present myself as that, but I do think we need more platforms like this great podcast that you host, Kiana, or the Swift Hour, things that are these more conversational pieces, especially when someone's interviewed where you're not interrupting them. You're
Yeah.
letting them talk, you're letting them speak. And, I think we need to get more of that type of content out there, not less.
Mm.
That's why you and I talk about podcasts all the time. Big podcast junkie, love
Oh, yeah.
listening to, there's so many good ones, but it allows you to think and it allows you to understand different perspectives
Mhm.
and views. And so that's what I love about these Swift Hour interviews.
No, it's so good. Well, I can't wait for the future of Swift Hours, so know that. And as we wrap up really quick, I just want to touch on your role as chair of the trustee program with the chamber.
Yes.
So let's talk about just your vision for that program and the fact that not only are you helping with programming with the trustee side, but also for the chamber breakfast side. So let's touch on that.
No, I first off, it's been such a pleasure to get more involved in the Chamber of Commerce, the Palm Beach Chamber of Commerce, and I want to tell you that you and Doug Evans and the team just do a phenomenal job, and I think you play such an important role for the Palm Beach community. And I remember going to my first, breakfast that you
We
all
all have
do
our
each
first
month,
one.
and I remember thinking, who on earth gets up this early to go to a breakfast? And I got there, I think at 7:15,
You were
and
late.
it was packed and the music was going and the energy and the vibe. And I think it's become such an important part of people's careers and lives. That breakfast, I just love it. But then you all explained to me about the trustees program, and the trustees program being this selective group of business leaders from the community that meet, a number of times a year. And it's just that extra higher level touch. And you all very kindly asked me to chair it. And anything that I get involved in, what I always think about is when I get involved to when I then take a step back, because I do think it's important to take a step back at the right time. I want to be able to always point to and say, here's the growth that occurred, and
Mhm.
here's the value that I brought to this body. And so my focus right now is how do we balance combining our community, truly appreciating and understanding just who lives in our community, the
Right.
amazing people that live here, combined with other people from all around the world who they've maybe not heard from and hearing about subjects that they've not heard from. And so I love the fact that in just this season's trustee program, our trustees have heard from one of the world's leading experts on wristwatches to one of the world's leading experts on search engine optimization, to hearing from a head of state, to soon hearing from the chairman of a global foundation, to then hearing from a former district attorney based here, who also happens to be a world renowned commentator on various criminal cases. So I love that
Yeah.
because it's showcasing um, uh, the diversity and the people that live here. I remember a few months ago, we hosted this woman, Catherine Parr, and
She was incredible.
Catherine's lived in Palm Beach for, I think, 7, 8 years. And here's this woman that had just gotten back from Jordan. She'd just done a Fulbright specialist program where she was teaching women how to develop businesses, especially within the fashion space. And so having her right literally 2 days after she'd gotten back talk about that experience, and there people went up to her and said, "I had no idea people like you lived here." And I think that to me is the win.
No, that's so good. And we are just so excited for the future of this program as well. So just know that. As we wrap up, I always close my interviews with some rapid fire questions.
Great,
So, first thing that comes to your mind, you have no time to think about it. Okay.
great.
Coffee or tea? What's your go to order?
Coffee with oat milk.
Favorite hidden gem in Palm Beach?
The Vias on Worth Avenue.
Oh, so good. That is really good. What is one book that changed your life?
Catcher in the Rye.
Really?
It it was the first book that I read that made me excited to read.
Oh, that's a great answer. And lastly, what is one piece of advice you would give your younger self?
Most of the moments that might feel like life or death moments are not. And take time to think things through, as an extension of that. Yeah. When I think back to it, and I'm going too long, I know, because these are rapid fire questions, but I gotta build on this.
Okay.
Uh, I'm struggle with this because there
Mhm.
were so many moments early on in the evolution of Concordia that felt like these life or death moments.
Mm.
And I think back to them now and I'm like, none of
Yeah.
those even came close to life or death moments when it came to the organization. And so I'm part torn thinking, gosh, how much time I wasted getting so stressed.
Mhm.
But then on the other side, I think if I didn't have that stress, would Concordia be where it is today? And I'm not sure it would be. So I
Mhm.
think about that a lot. But one of the few benefits of getting older, Kiana,
Saw you act
is
like you're 70 years old. He's
is
not,
is you
everybody.
is that you get that perspective
Oh,
to know how to handle certain situations and how to approach things.
that's so good. Well, Matthew, thank you.
Kiana, thank you. And by the way, congratulations on everything you're doing. You are a gem to the community and the chamber. What you do, the energy you bring to the entire membership community of the chamber, and also you are a vigorous defender of your members and your people at every step, which I know is one of the many reasons you are so endeared by the community. So thank you.